think in relationships there are certain boundaries that are just universal, that if someone crosses a line, it's always wrong, or does everyone just kind of decide for themselves?
Consent's a big one. If you're doing things without the other person's consent in a physical relationship, then I'd say that's 100% no-no. If someone's doing things and pushing you to do things, no.
Boundaries are set per person, but same with what she said. If it comes to consent, that always has to be 100%, or it's nothing at all.
Infidelity for sure, cheating of any, and that has so many shades of what cheating is. But yeah, that's definitely a hard boundary. So cheating could be like an emotional relationship, or actual like physical cheating, or even cheating financially, like opening a separate credit card account that you don't tell me about. So infidelity definitely of any kind is a boundary you can't cross.
Honesty, just be honest. Lying is it's hard to cross the other side, come back when you're lied to, just be honest.
Talking to somebody else on social media that's more than just a friendship.
I think that apps on phones and things like that have really become a big factor in breaking a lot of trust in a committed relationship, because you're like, oh, I'm just talking to this person, they're just my friends, but then it turns into maybe just an emotional, almost like affair, which then could eventually turn into a physical affair, and I think that's a big thing with breaking down committed relationships.
It is conditional, but if someone's like not in danger, but if it's like harm to their like emotional well-being, then that's of course an obvious boundary.
If someone's hiding something from the other person, that's a trust breaker, Yes. Everyone probably has their own standard for what is okay within their relationship or not in their relationship, like is having a friendship with someone of the other sex like okay to go out to lunch and maintain a friendship. For some people that might not be okay, for some people it might be.
It's interesting how people answer that question and how different the answers can be. Some responses are obvious. Others shift depending on who you ask. So, what actually defines a boundary? And who gets to decide where they're drawn? I'm Tim Tedder, a licensed counselor and creator of AffairHealing.com. Today we're going to consider the question of relationship boundaries. What are they? How are they defined? And what really counts as cheating? Before we start, I want to announce a shift I'll soon be making in how I work with coaching clients. For over 2 decades, I've helped couples and individuals work through all the various challenges of affair recovery. And I'm going to continue to address all these issues through the articles, courses, podcasts, and other resources available through AffairHealing.com. Our 2 other coaches will continue in their respective areas of focus. Jennifer Gingras will work with couples. Sharon Barber will focus on recovery from betrayal trauma. However, my personal work with clients will shift to those of you who have broken trust through infidelity. I don't want to just help you get through this difficult time. I want to help you understand why this is an opportunity to use your past infidelity and become the person your partner needs. That is my passion. I've been developing a focused system of help for involved partners. If that's you, and you'd like to know more about how I can help you rebuild yourself after infidelity, go to AffairHealing.com/rebuild for more information about unique opportunities for you. I'll post that link in the episode notes. Now, let's talk about boundaries and try to answer the question, what really counts as cheating?
Welcome to The Recovery Room, a podcast presented by AffairHealing.com.
In this healing place, in this healing place.
We often think of boundaries as limitations, focusing on what's kept out of a relationship, but that's only part of their purpose. Boundaries also define what belongs in a relationship, what partners can expect from each other. Boundaries aren't just fences, they're agreements about trust. And here's the problem. Most couples never really talk about them until after a violation happens. But when we assume our partner understands what we expect, we may discover we're wrong.
What are you doing?
Just scrolling. Nothing exciting.
Did you just like that post?
Yeah? Why?
Isn't that your old girlfriend?
Yeah. Heather. But that was ages ago. She posted some trip pics, so I liked it. Big deal?
She's in a bikini, Mark.
Yeah, but it's like a group of pictures. I was liking the whole vibe. Sunshine, travel, sand, you know.
Uh-huh, yeah. So if I post pictures in a bikini, you're going to be liking that whole vibe too?
Only if it was a tasteful bikini.
Wow, not helping.
Okay, I just didn't think it mattered.
Exactly. You didn't think. That's the problem. You didn't think about me.
Come on, Amy. It's a thumbs up emoji, not a winky face.
Well, maybe next time you can just send her flowers while you're at it.
I should have just liked the cat video.
You need to talk about your boundaries. Make sure you're in agreement. A clear, mutual understanding will define what betrayal means in your relationship. Unfortunately, trust is often broken in spaces that were never defined.
Are there certain boundaries that you think are universal? Like, if anybody crosses certain boundaries, it's always wrong, it always breaks trust?
No, because I think that just really depends on the relationship. Some people might be fine with some things and other people might not be.
Right. So as long as people in the relationship agree to what the boundaries are, anything goes.
I think, I think that if you know what that boundary is before crossing it, then it's a problem. But if you've established the boundaries and you go up until that boundary, it's fine.
So, are there any rules that apply to every relationship? I recently posted a survey on affairhealing.com asking for people's opinions about relationship boundaries. 78% strongly agreed that some boundaries are absolute and should not be crossed in any relationship. Almost all participants believed that partners should agree on all boundary issues. And when it came to cheating, emotional and online intimacy ranked nearly as high as physical contact. Affair recovery experts tend to agree that certain behaviors are always considered boundary breakers. When I reviewed how some of them address this matter, I found consistent agreement that the following behaviors crossed boundaries. The first is deception and secrecy. Private actions that contradict a partner's approval are violations of trust. This includes crossing into romantic or sexual territory with others outside the agreed relationship structure. Breaking the agreed rules is betrayal. The second behavior that always crossed boundaries was ongoing contact with an affair partner. Even, quote, just friends contact with an affair partner is a violation unless explicitly agreed on. The third, repeated micro-betrayals. These involved regularly dismissing a partner's feelings, ignoring attempts for emotional connection, or showing contempt. Individually, these may sometimes seem small, but they erode trust over time until they become as damaging as major betrayals. And then finally, blame shifting, refusing to take responsibility or blaming the partner or marriage for your own choices. In a partnership, all participants must be willing to maintain trust by acknowledging their responsibility. And giving up your responsibility by blaming someone else is a form of betrayal. Those four things are examples of things that tend to be fairly universal across relationships. Other boundaries, however, tend to be more fluid. Ones that are decided uniquely by each relationship. Some of the issues that fit into this category are friendships with ex-partners. Some couples allow, some don't. Safety depends on openness and agreed limits. A second fluid boundary might be social media interactions. Likes, DMs, and comments acceptable for some, triggering for others. A third fluid boundary might be privacy versus transparency. Some couples share devices and passwords. Others agree on partial privacy. The key, again, is mutual consent. And a fourth example of fluid boundaries might be emotional disclosure to others. In other words, sharing deep personal feelings with friends of the gender that one is attracted to. Some couples limit this, others don't. Early in my practice, I had to adjust my thinking because my perspective of betrayal was too limited. My personal experience with marriage and relationships had been from a monogamous perspective. So when I sat across from clients who were struggling with broken trust in an open marriage or a polyamorous arrangement, I had to adjust. I realized that these relationships experienced broken trust as well, but with boundaries quite different from the ones I typically considered. Could I help them? Of course. This was their relationship, and I had to meet them in the trust that they defined to help them work through what had been betrayal of that trust. Based on responses from my online survey, I suspect that many who access my resources might struggle to even understand how trust can be an issue if there's already an openness to emotional or sexual involvement with someone other than an exclusive partner. To help give us a perspective on this, I sat down with Dr. Erin Weaver to discuss the place of trust in non-traditional relationships. Dr. Weaver is a psychologist who works with clients involved in consensual non-monogamy. I'll post a link to more information about her in the episode notes. Here's part of our conversation. I know the terms consensual non-monogamy, ethical non-monogamy. What does that mean?
Yeah, so consensual non-monogamy and ethical non-monogamy tend to be kind of an umbrella term for relationships that just involve more than two people. For a lot of the people in the community, it looks very different. So some people want just romantic relationships with multiple partners. Some people want romantic and sexual relationships with multiple partners. Some people just want sexual relationships. So I think it's such a big caveat of an umbrella term, which really makes it look so different on what the rules and the boundaries within each dynamic really are.
I know that some listeners are going to listen to that and go, ethical non-monogamy? That's not ethical, because from their framework, it sounds like, well, there's no boundaries then. It's just these people get together, let's do whatever we want to do.
I think even people in the community also hear that monogamy is the gold standard in a lot of ways. So often people practicing ethical non-monogamy are even comparing themselves to that standard. But there are so many boundaries and discussions of boundaries and discussions of limits within ethical non-monogamous relationships that make them work. That doesn't mean that those don't get crossed at times or aren't hard to define, but that is the foundation, is really figuring out what are the boundaries within each relationship and how do those serve the people within it.
So the relationships, the people involved in the relationship, define what's appropriate and what's not appropriate in our agreement of what this relationship is. I wonder, are you aware of couples that have come to an agreement and experience long-term secure relationships within those agreements? Because I think probably the perspective is out there, well, relationships are coming and going, they're very short-term, and nothing really lasts. Is that an accurate view of what happens in this community of people?
I don't think so. I think that for some people that is accurate, but a lot of people within the ethical non-monogamous communities, specifically the polyamorous community under that umbrella, have long-term and fulfilling relationships with multiple partners. It's not easy, and what makes it such a challenge is that everyone within those relationships has different attachment needs, has different ways of communicating, and it really comes down to setting those standards of what does this relationship look like for the people in it.
So what are some of those boundaries that have to be negotiated in a non-monogamous relationship?
Oftentimes one that I see really commonly, especially with people starting out, is boundaries related to sexual relationships. So what type of protection are you using with specific partners? So if you are in a marriage and decide to open your relationship, are you using protection with additional partners? Because there are people to consider, right? If you are married to one person sleeping with another, there is the sexual health of both partners that need to be considered within that. Also, boundaries around time. So there are different structures within ethical non-monogamy and polyamory, and everyone has an opinion on whether it should be hierarchical or kitchen table poly or any of those things. So it's really, how are we deciding who is getting our time and energy and when, and also when are we protecting that for our individual selves versus relationships?
Is there some negotiation in regards to how open the people within the relationship are about other relationships they're connecting with, whether emotionally or sexually or both? I mean, is that a negotiation too, where some may say, you know what, you're free to do what you want. You don't have to tell me about these things, as long as we're honest about it and you're not crossing the boundaries that we've established? Or does it tend to be, no, we need to stay informed and be really strong communication about who we're with and all that sort of thing? I
find myself saying this a lot. It's really a mixed bag depending on what the people need. So oftentimes it really takes self-reflection for people in the community of like, what do I want to know from my partners? Am I comfortable knowing about their dates? Do I want to know the details? Do I want to feel compersion and excited for the relationship that they're building with someone else? Or am I noticing that that's bringing up jealousy with me? Or am I noticing that that feels uncomfortable and is kind of sparking some of my own things? And I want to set boundaries of like, I want to know that you are out on a date, but I don't want the details. So I think it really varies for each person and what they are wanting to experience. And it takes a lot of self-reflection on what you can tolerate and what you want out of the dynamic. Some people don't want to share the details of additional relationships, and some people, everyone in the relationship sits down and has dinner together. Hence the idea of kitchen table poly is this idea that we can all come together and be a community, even if we're not all romantically or intimately involved.
So in this world of ethical non-monogamy, what do you see as the most typical betrayals that tend to occur?
A lot of common betrayals tend to be when a boundary is established between two partners and then crossed, of course. So oftentimes we will see, again, like I mentioned, sexual boundaries. So saying that having an agreement with one partner that we are always going to use protection with any additional partners. And then as a relationship deepens with another partner, having someone make a decision to not use protection and then come back and inform the first partner of that, because that really does put sexual health at risk and feels like such a boundary violation.
It's a breaking of trust. We made this agreement. You did something different than what we agreed to.
Yes, exactly. Or different types of relationships. So if a relationship, it starts out and you and your partner have agreed to expand on sexual relationships, but feelings get involved. We're human, that's going to happen. But it's the discussion of how open are we to talking about that when that transitions from a purely sexual relationship to feelings and being open and honest about what that looks like.
Yeah, I think that's the first example that I had in real life of, working in a relationship where there was this agreement of non-monogamy. And this couple, it was just agreed to have a more open marriage that, we can go out and have sex with other people. We're just going to be honest with each other about it. And the boundary is it's physical only. We can't allow emotions to be involved. And if you do find yourself getting emotionally attached, the commitment is let's talk about that. And, in this particular case, the guy started getting emotionally attached to someone that he was in a relationship with other than his wife. And he kept it a secret. And that relationship continued to grow and grow until she found out and it became problematic. Not your typical situation, at least not typically that I encountered, but that was the breaking of their trust, of her trust, because they had a different agreement from the beginning.
I often find with people in the community that I work with, when that happens, and we can't compare monogamous relationships to non-monogamous entirely, but it's the idea of it almost feels, or it can feel for some people so much worse, of you had this permission and my rule was just tell me about it.
Yeah.
And
you had it so much easier.
Yeah, you had it so much easier. There were these things that other people can't do, but then it just feels like if we had given that boundary, like what led to not being able to communicate and actually talk about it. But that's such a challenge to be that vulnerable in any relationship.
Do you think in the community of people that you work with that there are any boundaries that tend to always be trust breakers?
I would say just the boundary of, I think when you're in a relationship with someone, and this is a very vague boundary of like, don't intentionally hurt me, I think is a common boundary in any relationship. But I think that looks very different. So in terms of what hurt could look like in that trust really depends on the dynamic. But I think that stands for any type of relationship, whether that's monogamous or ethically non-monogamous. I think with boundaries in any relationship, it really comes down to the communication and the understanding of the values and meaning behind them for each partner.
Boundaries are essential in any relationship, but they're often defined only after they're broken. Lack of explicit conversation breeds misunderstanding. Again, your boundaries not only define the behaviors you agree to leave out of your relationship, but the ones you agree to bring into it. What can you expect from each other? How are you going to work at respecting the relationship and caring for each other in mutually satisfying ways? Let me briefly explain something I'd recommend for you to do in your relationship so that you are in clear agreement about the boundaries. I'll also make this available in a download with a link provided in the episode notes, or you can visit affairhealing.com/podcasts/025 for more information. The exercise is simply this. Agree on a time that partners can sit down and discuss certain questions together. When you talk, focus on being curious, not trying to persuade each other to your point of view. And if you disagree, pause, explore, and try to figure out the reason behind each other's perspectives. Write down any unresolved boundaries to come back and revisit later. And if you need help, get it. Now, here are some of the areas you should discuss. Money. For example, what's a fair amount either one of you can spend without checking in with the other first? What should be a monthly limit for discretionary expenses in your relationship? Should you both have equal access to all the household money? Questions like that. You'll find some more listed in the download, or you can make up some of your own. Another area to discuss is sex and intimacy. What's okay or not okay regarding affection or flirtation with others? How do you feel about exploring new sexual experiences together? What are the things that are within the limits? What are the things that are out of limits? Talk about time. When work and relationship needs conflict, which one should take priority? Should partners always know how the other spends their time? How often should you take time to spend exclusive date nights together? Consider family and friends. Should your relationship take priority over extended family relationships? Do you agree on household rules and discipline? And how do you handle friendships or contact with exes or with attracted gender friends? And talk about openness and honesty too. When, if ever, is it appropriate to keep secrets from each other? Is withholding part of the truth the same as lying? Why or why not? These are the kinds of things you need to have conversation about so you can go away from that conversation having confidence that we understand the boundaries that we have defined for us. We know what we're leaving out. We know what to expect within. That defines what trust means for you. And if things have gone wrong in the past, find a way to make it right and agree on the way that you will move forward.
Hey.
Hey, you're back.
Yeah, I overreacted.
Oh, thank God. I was about to unlike everybody I'd ever met, even my mom.
No, don't unlike your mom. That's weird.
Yeah, well, too late.
I just realized we never talked about stuff like that. You know, what feels okay online, what doesn't. It just hit a nerve.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even think about it. I just hit like because...
Because your thumbs are faster than your brain?
Exactly. But if it bothers you, I won't do it again. It's not worth the fallout. Or the couch.
You're not sleeping on the couch.
Really?
Well, unless you like Heather's next post.
Done. Deleted. Wait, Heather? Heather who?
Sometimes boundaries aren't broken, they're just unspoken. But once they're clear, trust has a chance to grow. The lines that define love aren't drawn by culture or counselors, they're drawn by people who care enough to keep the conversation honest. And once they're drawn, you will know what counts as cheating for you. But boundaries don't just protect love, they give it room to grow.
Faith over failure.